that brings us to the second powerhouse of an element, and that is the weekly review. I think this is arguably one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable element in the entire system. And the reason for that is it is a nice mix between going a bit deeper than just the daily stuff, but still doing it at a very high frequency. So ultimately, I think things like core insights and vision goals are probably truly the most important stuff, but we don't revisit them as often. So they would also be easier to sort of do outside of this system and just grab a notebook and reflect and talk with friends. I feel like the weekly review is really an engine, really something that we use every single week, spend a lot of time with, become very intimate with this weekly review, and just consistently gives us a lot of value. So let's have a little look at the element connections, then we'll look at the structure, and then we'll get into a tiny bit of theory and start building it inside Notion. So the weekly review is connected to the daily review because we want to grab the statistics that we measure during the daily review and sort of give a little summary at the end of every week. Then it's also connected to the monthly review because during the monthly review, we want to pull data from the weekly review. We have the action tracker in there so that we can look back at all the actions that we completed in the last week. We also have the habit tracker in there for a very similar purpose. It's related to the project tracker. These two, and I will show you later, these two are so valuable in connection to each other. Like every single week, we check in with our project tracker and we make sure all of our projects are up to date and we sort of schedule actions related to the specific projects. And that's really, this is where a lot of the value is created in the weekly review. Then we also do some knowledge rating, right? Earlier in the knowledge flow, we sort of explored how we rate different knowledge pieces. And during the weekly review is our opportunity to take things from 2 or 3 stars and rate them into 1 or 2 diamonds. So that's, gives us a little opportunity to sort of rate that information. And the reason we do this at the weekly review is because in the moment, ideas might seem very great. At least this happens to me all the time. I'm just meditating or I'm walking and all of a sudden I'm like, boom, $1 million idea. But if I write it down and at the end of the week I reflect back on that idea, I actually realize it's not that good of an idea. So sometimes having some space between creation and actually reflection can help us really triangulate what is valuable. And get a little bit of the excitement out and be a bit more objective, a bit more detached when we look at that. And of course, it's going to be connected to the reflections database. And that's the element that we're covering after this because I think we're almost ready to get into that one. Okay, as you can see over here, the weekly review is at the same level of the project tracker. And now, as I was mentioning earlier, this is also where a lot of that value comes from. So every single week, we check in with our projects and we make sure that every project has action scheduled for it or not, if that is like our purpose, but we make sure that all of our projects at least have been updated. And we can be certain and confident that when we approach the upcoming week, everything's been taken care of. And that gives us a lot of clarity, right? A lot of clarity. We approach our week with intent. And I think this is so valuable about the weekly review. You take 30 to 60 minutes once a week. It sounds like a big sacrifice, but like we were exploring earlier with the sharpening the axe with the daily review, that is even truer for the weekly review. So taking an hour every week that might save you like a day of work is such a good investment. Just imagine that you're sitting down for an hour, you're doing a weekly review, and by the end of the week, you've saved yourself a day of work, either by becoming more effective, right, by not doing something that actually isn't productive, or by becoming more efficient, by finding a different way to do it, or by finding the right person that can help you with something. Just having that 1 hour a week can save us so much over the long run. And of course, that also compounds. So yeah, super powerful. And as you can see, key goals to start and end our weeks with clarity and intent through reflection and structuring. Okay, so principle number 2. We do not rise to the level of our goals, but we fall to the level of our systems. And the review cycles are really what make this system a system. That's what keeps it going. That's what keeps it flowing. And we already looked at the daily review, which is a very tiny feedback cycle. It's a very tiny system. And the weekly review is one step bigger. But once again, we need these reviews to take ourselves reliably from point A to point B. So don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. And then over here, and I'm just revisiting a few of these visuals because I think they're so important to get right. And at this stage in the system, we're also not getting into a lot of new concepts, but I think it's really important to reiterate the core concept, because these are the things, like these sort of concept, these sort of visuals, I've been teaching myself, I've been learning about this for many years. I just keep rediscovering them power, like compound interest. It's such a simple and relatively well-known idea, but almost nobody really incorporates it into their lives. And the question is, why is that? And I think it's because we don't, the idea of compound interest, the idea of exponential growth, doesn't intuitively click with us, right? We saw this, for example, during COVID, where we had this exponential growth, and even a tiny bit of exponential growth can mean that billions of people are infected within the span of a year. It's not something that intuitively makes sense to us. So even though people might be aware of something like compound interest or something like exponential growth, doesn't mean that we've ingrained it. And that's why I keep revisiting these concepts, because I would really, really, really want to emphasize, approach life in this way, right? Similarly, with a system like this, it's a large time investment. I'm very much aware that this is an unusual thing to do. You're watching this very long masterclass, you're putting in a lot of time and energy to sort of make this work. But if you look at it through this lens, it's like, oh, this is a multi-year investment in myself. And maybe currently I'm here and I'm watching this masterclass, and I'm going to be here, and then I'm trying it out for a month, and I'm going to be here. But then as you actually commit to something and have that long-term perspective, then we can start going to that dream outcome. And this is also sort of just to go on a little side tangent, this is also the core idea of the book that I mentioned earlier by Seth Godin, The Dip, is knowing when to quit. If I am here and I'm quitting over here, not being aware, let me actually reset that, not being aware that actually I'm already in this exponential curve, this would be a very silly time for me to quit. But this is what we do very often, especially in our culture. Like, everything needs to be a quick fix, right? And I've watched hundreds of these YouTube videos, like become a millionaire in 6 months, or build your dream business, or all these things, like become a marketer, become a designer, become a whatever it is. And the reality is that is just not true. Those people making those videos didn't make it in a few months. When you dive into their other content, there's always a story of multiple years of growth and development, and things just don't happen quickly. But we are so conditioned to think like, oh yeah, within the month, or like within 12 weeks, I'm going to have my result, that if we get to this point and we don't have this result yet, we quit. And instead of just bearing with that compounding effect, we basically quit too early. Okay, that was a little side tangent, just to remind us about the review cycle. So we have these different review cycles. We have the daily review, we just looked at that. Now we're going to do the weekly review. So it's going to be slightly higher level, and these feed into each other. So we take insights from the daily review, we take lessons from the daily review, and we sort of put them together. And we're going to do some pattern recognition. So we're going to see a little layer deeper. And we're going to do the same during the monthly, and then during the quarterly, and then during the yearly review. What's so powerful about this is that when we reflect back on things that happened, very often we have this thing called the recency bias, where things that happened more recently are more salient to us. They pop out more. And for example, if I ask you, in the last 3 months, what was something that made you happy, or what was something that made you smile? Odds are very high that the thing you pick happened in like the past few weeks instead of the past few months. And by keeping our reflection and then showing them during our next review, we actually get to see what we thought in real time. So during our weekly review, for example, we are also going to look back at our daily reflections, which is also why we use these databases, because it's very easy for us to look back at those daily reflections and actually see what was going on in real time. So rather than just reflecting back in the moment, we get to see those patterns, and those layer into each other. And every review, the patterns get a little bit deeper. And then by the time you hit your yearly review, that's when you start seeing very deep patterns about yourself. And yeah, those are the things that are super duper powerful. Okay, we're going to have more about that later. I think now it's time to get into the building of this actual bad boy. So let us open our good friend Notion. It's going to drag this tiny bit down because I see it's a little bit out of the screen. I got a bit of a cold last night, so I hope my voice is not too bad. And yeah, let's just dive into it. Okay. First thing that we're going to do. By now, this should be very clear to you. We're going to create a new table. And actually, I want to turn this into a page. And I'm going to call this one the weekly review. Now, similar to with the daily review, the database of the weekly review is going to be relatively simple. The magic is mostly happening in the template. So we're just going to grab this weekly review cover over here, put that on the database. Okay, boom. Call this one the master table. And as you see, every time we make these databases, I'm being very consistent in using the same naming and making sure everything gets its emojis, because this is how we help ourselves recognize and navigate through these systems with ease over time. Okay, so the first thing we're going to have over here is, of course, the week name. What is the name of the week? And the way that I usually denote these, let me just get this over here, is by saying, similar to with the daily review, I just use the first 3 letters of the month, and then the day of the date. Okay, next property we're going to add is once again going to be a date span. So this is just like in the project tracker, because a week doesn't just have a date, but it has a start and an end date. So we're going to give it a date span property. Now, the next thing we're going to do is an optional thing. We are going to make a relationship to the daily review so that we can grab the statistics that we have been tracking and roll them up and give us an average of the past week. This is only relevant if you're tracking statistics, which personally I am not. So this would just be my weekly review. It's literally just a week name and a date. But since we did build the statistic tracker into the daily review, we're just going to grab this one over here. I'm going to say daily review add relationship. And now we are going to create a roll-up. Now, a roll-up is basically a way of going into the connected page, right? With the relational database, we can connect pages to each other. So for example, I could connect this one to December 23 and December 24th. And then with the roll-up, we can basically go into this page and grab one of the properties over here. So I can basically say, okay, I want to grab, by rolling up, I want to grab from this existing relationship with the daily review, I want to grab the property, and as you can see, these are the same properties as that we have inside of our daily review page over here, right? These are the same properties: review date, weight, sleeping score, and then over here I get to go review date, sleeping score. So we get to go into this other page and grab a certain property. So for this one, we're going to say sleeping score. But the nice thing is, it's not just grabbing it from one page, but from all of the pages that are related to this specific review. So if we would add more pages over here, and I'm actually going to grab a bunch of dummy content to show you. I hope this works as smoothly as I'm hoping. Does that work? Ooh, look at it go. Perfect. Okay. I'm just going to whip this out for a moment. Okay, it didn't entirely work, but let's just fill this with a bunch of dummy content. Okay, perfect. Now, let us go back into our weekly review database. And if I were to now connect multiple days here, you can see it's grabbing all those values from all of these different daily reviews. And then we can use that data to then say, okay, I'm going to configure this rollup and actually want to not see all the original statistics, but I want to see the average, right? So we're going to say I want to get the sum. Not the sum. I want to get the average. You can see I'm not a mathematician. Beautiful. So just like that, we can connect our daily reviews to the weekly review, and we can roll up all of the information. Now, by applying the right filter to our daily review template, we can automatically make sure that all these databases are related to each other. So once again, we don't have to do this manually at the end of the week. We simply connect them, and if we want to, we can roll up the statistics. So I'm just gonna call this one for now statistic 01. And of course, we could do the same for the other statistic that we would be tracking. Let's say, for example, the weight. And I also want to have the average. Beautiful. Okay, let's unwrap this column. Boom. Just like that. Nice and easy weekly review database. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to create the weekly review template. And this is really beautiful. I love this one so much. And yeah, just a reminder. Let me not misclick there. We don't have to be perfect, right? Something like the weekly review, it's a commitment every week, 45 to 60 minutes. And even if we miss a week, we can still use this as a reset button. So even if you miss 3 weeks, the whole idea is you have something to fall back on. And once you sort of go through this review, you can reset your system and just start fresh. So it's not about being perfect, but it's about having a system in place that works for us. So we're going to call this one the weekly review template. And then we're going to customize this layout a little bit. I'm going to move all of these to the panel, and then I want to pin the date span. And if we're tracking them, the statistics, otherwise just the date span. I'm going to apply that, and actually we can also remove this comment section because we're not going to use it. Icon is going to be the moon. Cover is, of course, going to be not the database cover, but the regular one. Okay, beautiful. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a section for reflection and insight. I'm going to turn this one blue. And we'll have a little checklist here. And the first one is saying, I'm going to connect with my insight zone. So, in the next few chapters, we are going to get more into the insight phase of the circle of growth. And this is really the deep work, trying to figure out who you are, what is valuable to you, your core values, your core principles, your life purpose. And this sort of stuff we revisit only every quarter or year to really do that deep work. But also at the beginning of our weekly reviews, we sort of just go into that insight zone. Currently it's empty, but later it will be filled with all these deeper levels of reflection, and we just check in with one of these items. And this could be a 2-minute process. It could also be an hour-long process. Really depends on what you're feeling. So maybe you want to check in with one of your vision goals, or maybe you want to check in with one of your core values. And it's just a little reminder about the things that really matter to you. And that's sort of to set the stage. Okay, we're going to do this weekly review. Let's check in with the things that really matter to me. Let's start from that perspective. Let's plan the week ahead from that perspective. Okay, then we're going to check in with screen time, if that is something that you're interested in. I added this one relatively recently, but yeah, reality is nowadays a lot of us spend a lot of time on screens, and very often it's also time that is not necessarily used very well. So it can be valuable to just check in with the numbers and just give yourself the confronting reality of how many hours you spent on your phone or on your laptop and on which websites you're using that time. And now we're going to get a series of databases. I already briefly showed you the reflection databases, and we're going to completely deconstruct them in the next element. But for now, we're just going to add a few more reflection views that we can use inside the weekly review. The first view that we will have, let me go to the reflection database, is going to be the upcoming week. So basically what we do is at the end of every weekly review, we create the review for the week ahead. And then we end this review by sort of filling in these two reflection questions for the upcoming week. So these questions are, what intention and state of mind do I want to approach this week with, and what are my objectives? And once again, these can be 1 or 2 lines. They can also be 2 or 3 paragraphs. So this is just a way to set the mind, give ourselves some intent for the upcoming weeks. Like, what do I want to focus on? What type of person do I want to be? How do I want to show up in my interactions. And these things can vary per week, right? I've had weeks where I'm like, oh, this week I want to be very social, I want to be open, I don't want to take things so seriously. And then another week it might be, this week I'm going to go into my own space, I'm really going to grind, I'm going to sit down and do the work. And we're sort of thinking about this beforehand. We also give ourselves permission. I think a lot of the friction and a lot of the pain and difficulty that many people experience is because we have unrealistic expectations of ourselves. And instead of checking in with where we are actually at, we sort of paint this ideal scenario. It's like, oh, this week I'm going to be completely productive and I need to do X, Y, and Z. And we don't have the energy to do that. And then we fail doing it and we feel very bad about ourselves. We're like, oh my God, again, I had this plan and again, I didn't execute on my fucking plan. I'm a failure. I've had this many times. And what really helps, and it seems almost a little bit silly, is by just at the beginning of the week, checking in with yourself and asking yourself, okay, how do I want to show up this upcoming week? And maybe you realize, I'm pretty fatigued. The last few weeks were pretty rough. Okay, this week I'm going to focus on myself. I'm going to take some more time. I'm going to take some more space. I'm not going to be as rigid. And now when things don't work out the way you wanted them to, it actually doesn't feel that bad because we gave ourselves permission beforehand. So giving yourself permission can be a really powerful tool for just generally feeling better. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is sort of this layering that I was talking about earlier. So I'm going to take the previous day's view, and currently we don't have any content in here because we have not yet added those questions to the daily review. We have not added the reflection question to the daily review yet. So I'm just going to show you this briefly inside of the existing system, what this would look like. So let me just grab this weekly review over here. I'm just going to edit, open this one over up. Okay. What this view does is it basically shows us the reflection questions that we use during our daily review with all of the answers that we gave during the last week. So there's a filter here that says only show items that were added in the last week. Then over here, we have a little formula with the formatted date. And in one quick glance, you can see all of the reflections that you made per reflection question. And this is really where that pattern recognition comes in that I was talking about earlier. You can now see these reflections and actually say, hey, end of the week, I felt exhausted. But the first 3 days of the week, I actually felt pretty high energy. So it wasn't an exhausted week. It was a mixed bag of both. And maybe instead of taking a break next week, I can find a way to spread out that energy more. So we see these patterns by going through our reflections. And then we can open one up, and there's always like some extra writing space here if we want to go deeper into those reflections. But more on that in the next chapter. So we're going to add that view over here. And currently it says that there's only hidden groups, but the moment you add your reflections, this view will automatically sort itself. So this is perfectly fine for now. Okay, the next one is a pretty cool one. So we're just going to explore this new feature that Notion launched a few months ago. For many years, I was very excited to have some way to turn our databases into charts, because this is also the beauty about a database. A database can be very easily visualized in a chart. There used to be some external tools to do this, but it was all a little clunky and it didn't really sync in real time, or it cost extra money. And then Notion did the thing, and I'm so happy that they did. They released charts inside of Notion. Now, one thing I quickly realized is, actually, I don't need as many charts as I thought, because it's very easy. Just like it's easy to over-capture things, it's also easy to over-visualize things and over-build things. But yeah, this one I think is a really cool addition. So during our daily review, we added this rating score. What we're going to do over here is we're going to create a view, and basically charts are just different database views. So we don't have to create any new database. We can just link to an existing database. And over here we have our daily review. And actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to open this one up inside of the daily review itself, because that's where we make all the original views. And over here you can see these rating scores. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say create a chart. And I want to show on the x-axis the date. So I'm going to have the review date by day. and I will have to give all of these a date. So I'm just going to say 23, 22, 21, 20. And of course, normally this would all automatically be filled in the dates and stuff, so we don't have to worry about this tediousness. Perfect. Boom. Now you can see that we have our different daily reviews plotted on this y-axis. Is it the y-axis? It's the x-axis. Now, what do I want to show on the y-axis? I want to show the rating score. So we're going to say day rating. Show me that on the y-axis. And I do not want to group it. Okay, yeah. I almost forgot about this part. I'm like, why is it not showing us our rating? That's because we have a select property, and that is not a number. So what we need to do is we need to turn this into a number. Now, of course, we could also just turn this into a number property over here, and you can fill in a number every day, but I feel selecting like this is more intuitive and more fun. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to add a formula over here that is basically going to say, if the day rating is 1 star, turn it into 1, 2 stars, 2, and it's basically going to give a number that is correspondent to the rating over here. I'm just going to call that one rating score. Give it a little star. Boom. We get back into our chart. And now we actually have the opportunity to do the rating score. And I'm going to color. Yes, we can. What I've done here is what we're showing on this axis is the rating score. But I've then grouped it by day rating, because what could happen is that we would have, it's not going to happen, but what we could do theoretically is we could have 2 daily reviews on the same day, and they could have a different score, right? So let's say 3 and 2. If I would now go into this chart and I would not have this grouping, these would be averaged, right? Because over here I said what to show, the rating score, I want to show the average. I could also show the sum, then that one's going to grow, right? Let me give it a little bit higher to make it even clearer. I'm going to say 29th is going to be a 4-star rating. It's now taken the sum of those 2 entries and turned them into 1, because we're grouping it by, or we're putting it by date on this x-axis, and it's taking these 2 entries. So what I've done is I've said group it by the type of rating. And the reason we do this is purely for visual reasons, because now you can see, one of them is a 3-star and one of them is a 4-star. But since we only have 1 entry per day, it's basically just giving us the added feature of showing how many stars everything is and actually color coding it in relationship to, or I thought it was color coding it, but apparently it's not color coding it. Anyway, it is being consistent in their color coding. All the 3 stars are purple and all the 1 stars are yellow. So that is how we can make this little chart over here. I'm just going to hide. I think we do that in style options. I'm just going to end these. Yeah, just going to hide that legend. And then the last thing that we want to do, actually, I'm also going to hide those numbers because we don't need those. We can hide the data labels, is we're now going to say, I only want to see all of the day ratings from the past week. So review date is on or after, and here we can set a dynamic filter again. So the cool thing is we're now saying, I want the review date to be on or after last week. So that means everything after last week is being shown here. And because we're doing daily reviews every single day, that means everything between last week and now. So I'm going to say on or after 1 week ago, and then boom. Just like that, we now have a little graph of all of the reviews, all of the ratings that we gave in the last week. And I'm going to call this one Sun and Moon daily ratings. And then we're going to add that one to the weekly review over here. Empty view, daily review, daily ratings. Okay. This is one of the features that you need to pay extra for. I can highly recommend getting the personal Notion plan. I think it's like €8 a month. And if you're a student or if you're a nonprofit, I think you get free access, hefty discount or free access. And it allows you to make charts, but it also allows you to do all the automations stuff. So yeah, generally speaking, I can highly recommend making that investment. But as a rule of thumb, I want the system to work for anyone. So all of the core things that we use in the system, you don't need a paid plan for. But yeah, this is one of those things. If you want to add a chart over here, you would need a paid plan. Okay, so after we've added that chart, we're then going to add the actual weekly reflections that we're going to make. So I'm going to say weekly reflections. Boom. These are the questions that we answer during the weekly review. And what we can do is we can create a page in here. And if I would add one here, it's not going to show because we're editing a template. You see, I mean, it's showing here, but it's not showing over there. Normally, it would show in this list. And then over here, we have a whole bunch of writing space. So here, we can write very long reflections. And this is usually where I spend like 15 or 20 minutes just writing about stuff. Now, something that I've learned over the years is that sometimes a reflection can take very long. So ideally, I would start with the reflection first, but I've actually, over the past months, started doing my process review first, because sometimes I would take too long for the reflection and then actually not end the weekly review properly. So yeah, that's just something to think about. Reflection is super powerful. Just make sure it's well balanced, that your time is well balanced, and that it doesn't start feeling like a drag or something that needs to happen. Okay, then we're going to have two more charts. The first one is going to be the hours that we worked in the past week, and the second one is going to be the hours that we worked per project. So let's go into this action tracker. And I'm actually going to say, okay, I want to make a chart. Okay, I just quickly upgraded this workspace because this one was not yet a paid workspace. And okay, we've created a chart in here. And the type of chart that I actually want to show is a line chart. And once again, on the x-axis, we want to show the action date by day. And I'm just going to make a filter. And I'm going to say I only want to show actions that were on or after 1 week ago. Because we're doing the weekly review, we only want to see things that happened in the past week. And by doing that, start date is on or after 1 week ago. You can see it's automatically January 13th, January 27th. Okay, that's because I planned things into the future earlier when I was showing you this stuff. So let me actually remove. We don't want to see items that are parents. So I'm going to remove the parent items and then boom. Okay, there we go. So what happened there is during our project tracker with this timeline, we add these parent actions to the timeline. And obviously that is also giving them an action date. But we don't want to show those parent actions in this chart. So what I've done over here is I've said filter status is not parent. So don't show me action items, right? Don't show me action items that have, let me just open this one up, that status of parent, because those we don't want to see. So we've hit those parent action items, and now we actually see the actions that we did during the past week. But I don't want to see the amount of actions that we did. What I want to see is the time I spent working in total on all my actions. So on the y-axis, we're actually going to say what to show. I want to show the weekly workload. And I want to show the sum of the weekly workload. I'm just going to, the total input. I'm going to say the sum of the total input. Boom. And just like that, we can now see all the hours that we worked per day in the past week. So let's add some dummy information to just show you how this works. We got some action items over here. Let's add a few more. So work from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Now, normally, of course, all of this will happen when we're doing our project scheduling for the week. And then as we complete those, these will turn into total input. And then on this chart, we basically get an outline of all the hours that we've worked during the past week in a very nice little visual overview. So I'm just going to style this one a little bit. I'm going to smooth the lines. I'm actually going to turn the gradient area orange, or even better, turn it red. And just like that, hours worked past week. I'm going to give that the fire emoji. And then the next chart that we're going to make is going to be called hours per project. So it's going to be a very similar chart to this one, but instead of a line chart, we're going to make it a donut chart. And we are going to show, once again, the total input. And we are going to represent that by related project. So or should it be the other way around? Let's see. Project tracker. Each slice represents the total input. Yes, perfect. So right now you can see the total input that we delivered in the last week was 35 hours. And 13 of those hours were dedicated to building the Notion of Life website. Now, if we had related these actions to other projects, you would see that per project, we have worked these amount of hours. So this is a very quick overview at the end of the week for us to show how many hours we worked per day and how many hours we worked per project. So we're just going to add those to the weekly review template. Over here, I'm going to say empty view. From that action tracker, I want to get that hours worked per week chart. And also from that action tracker, I want to get that hours worked per project chart. I'm just going to name this one hours worked, and we'll just call this one per project height. And height, and boom, just like that. This would be sort of a little introduction into our weekly review. This is where we start. We do some reflection. We look back at the reflections that we made as the upcoming week's reflections during the last weekly review. We look at all of our reflections from the previous days. We look at how we rated our days. Take some opportunity to do some actual reflection for this week itself. And then over here, we can just quickly see how many hours did I work every day and how many hours did I work per project. And for example, if you are someone who's working on 3 or 4 different projects and you're getting paid for those, this can be very helpful to keep yourself honest and seeing if you're actually putting in the time that you think you're putting in or that you say you're putting in, either to yourself or to clients. Okay, from the future here. If you want to build this Notion system from scratch using this masterclass, then all power to you. However, if you want to start using the system straight away, then I can highly recommend getting the Notion of Life template. And inside of this template, you will find ways to quick capture and create action items and notes. You will be able to organize your projects, to set vision goals, SMART goals, to track your core insights. You will be able to track habits with, I gotta say it, the best habit tracker that has ever been built inside of Notion. And on top of that, we have a whole bunch of user-friendly formulas, automations, data visualizations, many databases, many templates. All of this stuff that we are doing inside of this masterclass, you can start using it straight away. And as a little cherry on top, the first 50 people to get this template will get a free 1-hour coaching session with yours truly. So, if you want to support the work that I'm doing, and if you want to start using the system straight away, then check out the link in the description down below to get instant access. All right, let's get back to the masterclass. Got a great little divider between here. Next, we are going to do the review part of the weekly review. And as we discussed in the Circle of Growth, the review is where we check in with the processes, right? So the reflection is where we check in with ourselves. Am I the person that I want to be? Am I doing the things that I want to do? And the review, we check in with more of the mechanistic things. Are my processes, are my systems still working? Does my system need any maintenance? Do I need to change anything about the flow that we're basically building inside a Notion of Life? The first thing that we do is what we call inbox 0. And I'm going to say empty email inbox, empty WhatsApp inbox, and any other inbox that you might have. The concept of inbox 0 is basically that at the end of the week, we want to make sure that all of our inboxes are empty. Very often, people will use their email inbox as a sort of half-baked to-do list. So you just keep everything in there. That's like your knowledge management. Like you leave an email open because you still need to reply to it. And that is not a good way to structure our lives. We're sort of letting other people dictate how we are planning and structuring our days. And also every time we open that to sort of look for that old email that we still needed to respond to, we get a whole bunch of new emails and instantly our attention gets hijacked. So the idea of inbox 0 is basically that we put our inbox to 0. Now, there's a great article by Tiago Forte, I will link that one on the screen, about sort of how to achieve this and the reasons behind it. I think there's two different camps. People that always want to have inbox 0, or people like me who just want to do it once a week, but just make sure it gets to 0 every now and then. So the way we do this is we simply go through our emails. I just opened this one beforehand without spoiling any of my personal stuff. And then over here, I have this plugin, and I showed you this before. It's called Save to Notion. And what I can basically do is I can forward an email either into my knowledge database or into my action tracker. So if there's knowledge in an email that I need to revisit, I'll send it to the knowledge database. And if there's an action item in the email, I can simply put it over here and I can just save it, boom, straight into my Notion. And just like that, it will be inside my Notion. And that is the thing that we want to do with all of our emails. We want to process all of them. Either we delete them, and if there are useless emails, we delete them, and preferably if it's like an automated thing, we unsubscribe. And when they're useful, we process them. So we either capture them into the knowledge inbox or into the action inbox. And we make sure that every email has a very clear follow-up on what to do with it. Then at the end of the email inbox is empty, and every email is actually gone through the proper place. And then later, we put it in our inbox, we can relate it to our projects, and we can schedule it during our weekly review. So we can schedule it in the next phase also. So that's what we're doing. We're emptying all of our email inboxes. And then what I do is actually I just link to the websites for emptying these inbox. And the way we do this is Command K. We can simply make a hyperlink. This one could be webwhatsapp.com. And just like that, you can just click those links, instantly go to that page, empty all of your inboxes, check the box, and on to the next one. So the next one is going to be the action review. This one is really, really powerful and really important. So first, we are going to check in with our calendar for the past weeks. Ask ourselves, does anything need a follow-up? And then the second one is check in with calendar for the upcoming weeks. Does anything need preparation? Once again, here you could either link to your calendar. What I have is just my Notion calendar under hotkey, Command G, and I can just instantly open it up. So basically what we do here is we go into our calendar and we see if there's anything that needs to happen. Now, an important distinction to make between calendar and action tracker. You might be wondering, why do we even have a calendar? Why do we just not just use an action tracker? The reason for this is that there's also things that we need to do in the external world. There's also meetings that we need to take with other people. So as a rule of thumb, anything that has other people involved, I put in a calendar. I invite them or I am invited by them, and I make sure everything that happens in relationship to other people is in the calendar. And then everything that is just up to me, that we put in the action tracker. And then through Notion Calendar, we can put those two things together in one overview like this. And so then first what we do is we look at the external calendar events, and see if there's anything that needs to be done. And after we have done that, then we actually go into our projects and start scheduling our own actions. So that is actually what we're going to do right now. And the first view that we want to have for that is our active projects listed in such a way that we can easily go into them and start scheduling action items. So what we need to do for that is we need to go into the project tracker, and we actually need to create a new view. So this one's going to be the active projects view. We're going to use this one both for the planning zone as well as for the weekly review. So for now, I'll just add a little moon here. Done. Okay. I'm going to hide all these properties, and what I want to see the progress of each of the projects. I want to see if it's due to be reviewed, paired with the actual review date, and I want to see if it's any days past date. I'm just going to make this one nice and symmetrical. I'm going to make this one a little bit shorter. I'm going to make this one. I'm actually going to put the progress over here. I'm going to make that as tiny as it needs to be. Boom. Okay, you could imagine, let's add some other projects, right? Renovating the kitchen might be a project. And maybe we have another project, which is training for half marathon. Okay, and we can give these some review dates. I'm going to put this one on 31st. And I'm going to put this one on 22nd. Okay. This is basically going to be the view that we have inside of our weekly review. So let's add that one right over there. I'm going to say linked version, project tracker, active projects. Boom. I'm going to hide this database title over here. And now, during our weekly review, we can simply see all of the active projects. I realize I forgot to add the filter that says indeed only shows active projects. We don't want to see any next up projects. See, a few of them already disappeared. So let's also add that. In the OG that we were just doing, filter status is active. And we'll just change a few more to active. Boom, boom. Okay. So then during our weekly review, we basically go into all of the projects that are due to be reviewed. And actually, let me also add that sort of saying indeed review date ascending. And we could use only the date property here, but this little red circle just makes it a bit easier. We don't have to scour through all the dates. We can just see, okay, all the ones with the red dot, those are the ones that we need to do. And then so we go into this page, and then inside the project tracker, I'm actually generate the full template that we created earlier. Inside the project tracker, I am now just going to schedule all of the action items for the upcoming week. I can just simply add these, boom, just like that. I'm just going to assign them a date for now. Once I've done that, I close this one and I put the review date to next week. Maybe you don't want to review a project every single week. Then you can also put the review date in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks, right? You will know how much time and energy you want to put in per project. And then we're just going to do the same for the other projects. So I'll just open this template here. And over here, I'm also going to add training and food schedule. And buying new running shoes. I'm just going to give those also just some action dates for the upcoming week. And then we just do this for every single project that is due to be reviewed. And then once we have done that, then we can actually go back into our calendar and we can start adding all of these sub items, right? We're going to start adding all of these sub items that we just put in. And this is how we plan our weeks using the combination of the weekly review and the project tracker. Actually, going to change this because I don't like green. Can we put this to like an orange, for example? There we go. And later I will show you how to hide these parent pages. But for now you can see, okay, we have created our plan for the upcoming week. Okay, back into Notion. So then next what we want to do is we want to create a chart. And basically we want to create a chart that shows us what is the weekly workload for the upcoming week? Because if you remember, inside this project tracker, we actually made a property called the weekly workload. And this one calculates how many hours of work we have planned based on all of these action items that we just scheduled. So we just put all of them in the calendar. It automatically calculates, this is 2 hours, this is 2 hours, this is 1.5 hours. And per project, it then shows us, okay, this is the weekly workload I have scheduled for the week ahead. So let's go inside our project tracker. Okay, and now what I want to do is I want to create this chart here, and we are going to make that a donut chart. And what I want to show is for each of the project names, I want it to represent the weekly workload. Boom. And just like that, we now have our total weekly workload for the week ahead divided by project. So you can imagine if we have 4 or 5 different projects and we have 30 hours of work scheduled for the upcoming week, we can see, okay, this project we scheduled 4 hours, this one we scheduled 10 hours, and it just keeps us accountable. And it's very easy because the only thing that we do is we drag those actions on the time block, and that's already a really great way to plan. Then all this time tracking happens automatically in the background. So we're going to call this one Seedling Weekly Workload. Boom. Getting back into that weekly review template. Misclick because I have very fat fingers. And we're going to say, add this chart over here. And this chart I'm actually going to call the project tracker. Nope. Pay attention. Delete. And actually get an existing chart. Boom. Weekly workload. So just like that, we just scheduled actions for each of our projects, and then we have weekly workloads so we can see what we actually scheduled. Now, there's one more view here that you can add, but don't have to add. Because during our action tracker earlier, when we were building that, I was sharing that we have this status tag that we can use for things that we want to do someday or that we're waiting for someone else. Now, what we can do is we can create a view in which we show all of the action items that we are still waiting on other people. So I'm just going to quickly create that one here. I'm going to say table view. I'm going to hide all of these properties. We're just going to have the to-do. We're going to have the action date and the status because we need to be able to change that if it's no longer waiting on. And then I'm just going to have that right over here. Boom. And I'm going to create a filter that says, only show me action items. Only show me action items that have a status of waiting. Boom. And obviously, don't show me ones that are checked. So done is unchecked. Okay. A little fire emoji waiting on. Now, full disclosure, I don't really use this one. So feel free to leave it out. But if you are doing a lot of outreach to people, if you have a lot of tasks that are happening in relationship to other people, then by all means do add this one. So I'm just going to say empty view, action tracker, waiting on. And then basically what this allows us to do is at the end of the week, just briefly check in. Okay, I send out this thing at one point. Did the person respond to it, yes or no? And if they did, we can just remove that tag again. And if they did it, maybe we can ping them again. Send them a message like, hey, I sent you this on Monday, but you haven't responded yet. Could you please help me because I really need this information right now? Okay, last few we're going to add here. We're actually not going to add quite yet, but I'm just going to show you how it works because this one is quite complicated, but it's also really, really cool. Over here, we have a button, and when we press that button, the habit is automatically added to our calendar. So for example, with this habit over here, cold call potential customers, it is set to the time of day at 9 o'clock for a duration of 75 minutes. So this button is automatically going to understand that we are going to put this one at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's going to be a 75-minute block. And by then just pressing on this button, it has now created 7 pages. I can go into my calendar. I'm just going to hide this one and open the one from the other workspace. And you can see that it has automatically been plotted into my action tracker. So it's already in our time space, and then also all of the hours are once again plotted and added to the actual project that it is a part of. So this is a really helpful way to making sure you actually take the time for your habits. And yeah, it's a bit more complicated, so I'm going to show you that one later on in the video, but I just wanted to tease it real quick as we were building this weekly review over here. So yeah, that is going to be the action review part of the weekly review. Now, the next part that we do is, of course, knowledge, because action and knowledge go hand in hand. Action and knowledge, that is how we make our production capacity. So over here, I'm just going to say knowledge review. Turn that one purple. And over here, we want to do two separate things. The first thing that we want to do is that we want to check in with all of our knowledge pieces that are still open. Because like we explored earlier, knowledge should always be flowing. And each knowledge piece has an amount of days left that we can work on it. So as long as there's still days left to work on it, we also routinely want to check in with it. Because yes, we do have a knowledge zone in which we can have all of our knowledge pieces, but realistically, most of the time we're interacting with stuff is when we're doing a process, when we have our review cycles. So at the end of the week, I just want to check in with all of the open knowledge pieces. So let's build that inside of our knowledge database. What we want to do is we want to have a view, and we're going to make this a list view. And I'm going to call this one open knowledge. I'm going to say thread and moon. Moon thread, baby. I like to thread that moon. And we're going to have a few properties show, namely, I want to have the days left. I want to see the content named. I want to see the last edited. And I want to see the source. And then the days left I want to have on the left. And then the rest of this is perfect. Okay, so now on the left here, we can see how many days is left for each of the knowledge pieces. Then over here, we could simply open the knowledge piece to interact with it. And then on the right here, we can see when it has been last edited and the source of the knowledge piece. Now, currently it's just one list, but actually what we want to do is we want to group it by the type of knowledge piece. So what I'm going to say over here is I'm going to group it, and I'm going to say group it by type. And a grouping is basically a different way to sort of chop up a database and to put certain entries together based on a certain group, which is why we call it a grouping. So I'm going to group this by type. And as you can see now, it has been grouped so that we have all of our creation notes under one little toggle. We have all of our meeting notes under one toggle, and we have all of our learning notes under one toggle. And now it also doesn't make sense to show the icon anymore because we already know which one it is a part of. So we can also just hide that icon like this, and then boom. Very easy. We can just see, okay, 30 days left on Web Design 101, 30 days left on Meeting with Web Agency. And very quick overview. Now, we need to apply one filter here because we only want to show things that have no more, we only want to show things that still have an amount of days left. Because let's say, for example, I would duplicate this one and I'm going to give it a 1-star rating. And if you remember, 1 star basically means autocomplete. So that also means no more days left to work on it. I don't want to show that because this is no longer open knowledge, right? This has been archived. This is not part of that flow, not part of the knowledge flow that we're creating. So I'm going to create a filter. I'm going to say days left is equal or higher than, not even equal or higher than, it's just higher than 0. Boom. So it's only going to show things that actually are still active, that actually still have an amount of days left. And just like that, I want to sort it by days left ascending, which basically means that it's going to show us in chronological order. The ones on the top are going to be the ones that have the least amount of days left, so the ones we need to engage with the soonest, if we still want to engage with them. And then the rest is going to be here. All right, hope that makes sense. Just an easy way to check in with all of our knowledge pieces and make sure if there's anything else that needs to happen. Now, the next thing that we want to do, and this we looked at earlier, it maybe didn't make a lot of sense at the time yet, but I hope now it will click a little more, is that we actually want to rate our knowledge. Because during our daily review, all right, let me just open up that daily review template. We empty our inboxes, right? And inside of this inbox, we give a rating to all of our knowledge pieces. And a rating of 1 is basically autocomplete. It means like, okay, I need to keep this somewhere in my archive. Maybe it was like a meeting note for just a very random meeting. Usually most meeting notes I put on 1 star because they don't really need to be done anything needs to be done with them. But yeah, 1 star is basically autocomplete. 2 stars, it's like relatively interesting, but probably not going to turn into an actual thing. 3 stars is something where I'm like, okay, this will most likely become like an actual document or an actual thing that I'm going to be working on for quite some time. So during our daily review, we give something 1, 2, 3 stars. But then during our weekly review, we actually give ourselves the opportunity to give something a rating of 1 or 2 diamonds. So we can sort of reflect back later in the week, because like I said earlier, sometimes in the moment things just feel very valuable, but then later they don't, or even the opposite, like maybe something in the moment's like, meh, and then later you're actually like, this is pretty fucking interesting. So then during our weekly review, we can actually take knowledge pieces and upgrade them from 1, 2, or 3 stars to 1 or 2 diamonds. Okay, the way we do that is by once again creating a list view. And the properties I'm going to show here are just going to be the content name and the type of knowledge. And I'm actually going to group this one by rating. And I'm going to turn this one off because what I want to show is I want to show the 1 stars, the 2 stars, the 3 stars, and the diamonds. And these ones I want to hide. Okay, I actually did it the wrong way around. And we want to have 2, 3, 1 star, 2 diamonds. Boom, just like this. And then we're going to apply a filter that says I only want to show things that have been last edited on or after 1 week ago. So we basically only want to interact with all of the knowledge pieces that we have edited in the last week. They are all going to show up in this view. And then from this view, we can easily drag something into the new rating. So let's say, for example, indeed, this one, I believe, is actually 1 diamond. We can just drag them into the 1 diamond rating. Or we can even drag them into the 2 diamond rating. And by dragging it, we automatically increase the score, which then also increases the amount of days that we can work on it. So by giving something a higher rating, it automatically stays in this flow longer, right? Because we want to keep that knowledge actionable. If I were to just keep it in here, days left is going to be 30 days. And then within 30 days, it's just going to disappear, right? So by upgrading a piece of knowledge, we give ourselves more time to work on it. Okay, that is basically what we do during the knowledge rating. I'm also going to give that the moon because we like the moon thread, baby. And a little sort to say days left, ascending, beautiful. Okay, back into the weekly review template. And then over here, I'm going to say knowledge. Oh, and isn't this satisfying? Look at all this stuff, man. We're just building it in the original databases. Everything is coming together so nicely. And yeah, the beauty about a system like this is you just set it up once. And once you have it, you can just use it. You know, it takes some time to understand. It's like my poor girlfriend has to compete with Notion databases. Okay, cool. Not cool, actually. I edited this under the wrong once because this is, of course, going to be part of the knowledge review, not the action review. So let me just redo that over here. Linked view, knowledge database, open knowledge, and of course, knowledge database, the knowledge rating, height. And once you can see I'm always hiding the database title because this is why we use these emojis so consistently. Just by seeing this thread in the tab, I already know what database it is. So I don't need to have a massive database title just hugging up space on the page because I already know what it is, right? And that's why we're being consistent in design. Okay. Then over here we have structure, which is basically going to be some stuff in our physical space. Clean up my desktop, clean up any important folders, and clean up physical workspace. So this is basically anything we're doing outside of the Notion system. And then the last thing that we're going to do is actually plan the week ahead. So over here, I'm going to say planning. Going to make that orange, which is not a color, unfortunately, although it would be a really cool color, orange. Hey, I really love that orange t-shirt that you're wearing today. It's very, very beautiful, very orange. And now we're going to create another button. And with this button, we want to create the weekly review for the upcoming week. So basically, when I push this button, I want to create the weekly review for the upcoming week. So I'm going to call this one create new review. And of course, we give that the moon emoji. And I'm actually going to add a little confirmation. I'm going to say show confirmation. And instead of saying, are you sure you want to continue? I'm going to give myself a reminder. Almost there. Next thing we need to do is fill in the objectives and the intentions for the upcoming weeks, what I showed you at the beginning of this template. And then we can reward ourselves for doing this deep work. Especially at the end of the week, then we go do something fun. Then you sit in the sauna or you have a drink with some friends. So I'm going to say, yes, let's wrap this one up, baby. Boom. And then I'm going to say, good. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to add a page to the weekly review. And we want to add that as the weekly review template. So by pressing this, we are now going to automatically create a new weekly review. Now, we're also going to do a little bit of magic shebang, and how this works I will show you later. But basically what I'm going to say is the week name, I want that to be automatically made. And basically what this is doing, it's going to take the date that we create this, and it's going to automatically already assign the week name to the next weekly review so that we don't have to do that manually. And then I'm going to do something similar for the date span, which I also want to set automatically. So I'm going to say date span. And over here, I'm also going to create custom formula. Once again, later on in this masterclass, we're going to take a deeper dive on all these formulas because this is where a lot of power is hidden. And also one of the reasons why we use so many databases. But it's quite complex. And yeah, I just want to ease into this, right? We're taking you from 0 to hero. So let's also start at 0 and just ease our ways into it. But I am just going to put it in there and show you because it is very nice. And then the next thing that we want to do, we want to immediately open this weekly review that we just created. We just want to open that in full page because we want to fill in those reflection questions. We might as well just open the page straight away. So we're going to hit done, create new weekly review. That is going to be the button. And then you can see now, if I press this button, it's going to say almost there. Fill in your objectives and intentions. Let's wrap it up, baby. We press that button. Boom. New weekly review has been created. Name has automatically been set. Date span has automatically been set. We are going to go right over here and we can fill in the reflection questions for the upcoming week. Isn't that beautiful? Tell me, look me in the face and tell me this isn't beautiful. Great stuff. I love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, cool. That being said, last thing we're going to do is we're going to set our daily review template to this week. So what do I mean by this? Well, let me show you. We're going to go into the daily review template. Are we allowed to do that? I'm not sure if we are allowed to do that. Let me see. I think maybe we'll just have to go over here and then copy the link and then go back and then just simply go like this and have a little heck around. Boom. Because the last thing that we want to do is at the end of our weekly review, we want to go into this template and we basically want to set this relationship to the weekly review to the one that we just created. And the reason we do that is because once we put this in the template, every day that we create a daily review, this property over here is automatically going to be assigned to the right week. And we need that property because otherwise we are not able to, inside this weekly review, roll up those statistics because we need to link the right days to the right weeks. So by just setting that once at the end of the weekly review, just change the template, and we don't have to think about it again. And then last thing that we do is we say, good job. Time to reward yourself, right? Because at the end of the day, we just made a difference. This is the type of work that makes a difference. This is the type of work that helps us live the life that we want to live. And we can celebrate that. We should celebrate that. It's a enjoyable process in general, but we can also celebrate doing something that is good and healthy for ourselves. Okay, so let's just exit the template and go into the database collection zone. Weekly review. And let's just give it a go. Let's just give it a small spin to see if everything works. We're going to set the default template to weekly review because we're always going to create a weekly review. Normally we create it during our last week, and then boom, we can open this one up. And yes, we can connect with our insight zone. We have our reflections for the upcoming week. We can check in with our reflections that we made during the past week, during our daily reviews. We can check in with the ratings that we gave. We can make some reflections for the current week. This is some time to dig a little deeper, ask questions that are a little more challenging, and just give you a bit more understanding about yourself. We can see the amount of hours that we worked every single day, and we can see the amount of hours that we worked per project. Then we empty all of our inboxes, make sure that all of our inboxes are at 0, and that every single knowledge or information piece is either turned into an action or turned into a knowledge piece. Then we check in with all of our active projects, all of them that are due to be reviewed. We schedule those actions, and we actually put that onto our Notion calendar. And after that, we can then also see how much work have I actually scheduled for myself for the upcoming week. If you want, you can check if there's any items that you're waiting on. Then we can just briefly check in with our open knowledge. And just a note to make here is that you don't have to check in with all of the knowledge piece. You can also it can just be a quick reminder. And even if it's just a 1-minute glance, you'd be like, oh yeah, I did indeed have that meeting with the web agency and I still need to do something with it. Doesn't mean you have to do it right here, right now. I mean, you can if you want to, but you want to keep the weekly review accessible, because if it's too much all at once, you're going to procrastinate and not do it. So yeah, but quickly go through it. Then we can change any ratings, and it's going to give you that error every single time. You just press don't remove. I don't know why it does it. It's very annoying, but it works. So just keep it like this. Clean up desktop, clean up important folders, have that one single button to create the next review, change the daily review template, and boom. Just like that, we do our weekly review inside of Notion. Okay, let's actually process all of these things that we've done and move on to one of the very complex but ever prevalent databases. You know it, the reflections.